Ladies and gentlemen, have you ever walked away from a conversation smiling, but felt hollow inside? You said yes again, you agreed again, you suppressed what you truly felt again, and for what? To be liked? To avoid conflict, to fit into a world that doesn't even see the real you. Let me tell you something straight. Being nice to everyone is not kindness, it's self-erasure. And if you don't stop, you'll wake up one day surrounded by people who like you, but none who know you. This speech is your wake-up call, because until you learn to stop being nice to everyone, you'll never become who you're meant to be. So stay with me till the end, because what you're about to hear might just change the way you live your life forever. Every time you say yes when you mean no, every time you laugh at a joke that offends you, every time you tolerate behavior that crosses your boundaries, you're making a deal with your soul, a deal that trades truth for temporary approval. But here's the twist. People don't remember your niceness. They remember whether you respect yourself, and they treat you accordingly. Nice people get overlooked. Authentic people get heard. Most people aren't nice. They're performing niceness out of fear, out of habit, out of a deep need to belong. But the price is too high, because every time you perform, you get further from yourself. Your energy gets drained. Your resentment builds. You become a ghost, smiling on the outside, screaming inside. It's time to stop performing. It's time to start living. Think of the strongest people you admire. Are they nice to everyone? No, they are kind, yes, but also clear. They have boundaries, and they enforce them without guilt. And guess what? They're not feared. They're respected, not used, but valued, because people don't respect what you allow them to walk over. You don't owe anyone your time. You don't owe anyone an explanation for your truth, and you don't need to feel guilty for protecting your energy. No is a complete sentence. When you stop explaining, people start listening. The world is not short on politeness. It's short on courage, on realness, on presence, on integrity. Be that. Be the one who speaks up. Be the one who chooses truth over harmony, because harmony that comes at the cost of your soul. That's not peace, that's prison. Being nice to everyone sounds like a noble goal. We grow up hearing phrases like be polite, don't make a scene, be agreeable. We learn early that being liked often comes with rewards, approval, praise, social acceptance. So we internalize this behavior. We hold our tongue. We swallow our truth. We offer polite smiles when we're uncomfortable, and we say yes when everything inside us screams no. But the longer you live this way, the more you begin to realize you're not being nice, you're abandoning yourself. Self-betrayal doesn't always come in loud, dramatic acts. Sometimes it's quiet. It creeps in through small, everyday choices. You agree with someone you disagree with, just to avoid tension. You let someone talk over you and don't correct them because you don't want to come off as rude. You say yes to plans you dread, just so no one's feelings get hurt. On the surface, it looks like kindness, but inside, something is eroding. Every time you choose being nice over being honest, you chip away at your own identity. You bury your needs under layers of politeness. And while the world may applaud your behavior, your spirit slowly starts to suffocate. Why does this happen? Because most people confuse being nice with being good. But there's a crucial difference. Niceness is often about making others comfortable, even at your own expense. Goodness, on the other hand, comes from integrity, from doing what's right, not what's easy. And sometimes what's right is uncomfortable. Sometimes it requires confrontation. Sometimes it means disappointing others to stay true to yourself. This is the crossroads many people avoid. The moment when being liked and being authentic no longer go hand in hand. That's when self-betrayal becomes the norm. You tell yourself you're keeping the peace, but you're really just avoiding rejection. You tell yourself you're being generous, but you're actually afraid of being alone. So you trade your authenticity for acceptance, but here's the problem. No amount of external validation will ever feel fulfilling when it's built on the suppression of your true self. People who constantly try to be nice to everyone often find themselves exhausted, anxious, and secretly resentful. Why? Because they're constantly managing other people's emotions while ignoring their own. They walk on eggshells. They monitor their words. They overthink every interaction, all in the name of being perceived as pleasant, likable, agreeable. But underneath the surface, there's a silent war going on. The mind says, be nice, stay safe. But the soul says, speak up, be real. Eventually, this internal war leads to burnout. You feel emotionally drained because you're not expressing your truth. You feel disconnected because the version of you that people like isn't the real you. You begin to wonder if anyone truly knows who you are, and the answer is often no, because how can they? You've hidden yourself behind a wall of niceness for so long. You've forgotten what it means to show up fully and unapologetically. This isn't to say that kindness is wrong. On the contrary, kindness is powerful when it's rooted in self-respect. True kindness comes from a place of strength, not fear. It's possible to be compassionate without abandoning yourself, but that requires clarity. It requires knowing who you are and what you stand for. It requires being okay with the fact that not everyone will like you, and that's hard, especially if your identity has been built around being the person everyone turns to, leans on, or approves of. But here's the truth you must accept if you ever want to be free. You cannot be everything to everyone, and every time you try, you lose a piece of yourself. The goal isn't to be nice to everyone. The goal is to be real, grounded, and honest, even if that honesty occasionally makes others uncomfortable. Because the people who truly belong in your life don't want your performance, they want your presence. And the only way to offer that is to stop betraying yourself in the name of being liked. Your voice matters, your boundaries matter, your feelings matter, so stop silencing them to maintain an image. Let go of being nice and start being true. There's a widespread misunderstanding that being kind means being soft, passive, or even weak. People often assume that if you're kind, you should always be agreeable, always forgiving, always available. You're expected to say yes, to avoid confrontation, to put others first, to absorb discomfort and smile through it. But real kindness doesn't require you to be a doormat. In fact, genuine kindness only becomes sustainable and powerful when it's backed by firm, unapologetic boundaries. The truth is, kindness without boundaries isn't kindness at all itself. Sacrifice, and too much of that turns into resentment. You might begin with the best of intentions. You want to help, to support, to be there for others. You believe being kind is the right thing to do, and it is. But when your kindness comes at the cost of your mental, emotional, or physical well-being, it's no longer virtuous, it's a form of self-neglect. Here's the paradox. People will respect you more when you show them where the line is. The moment you define your boundaries, what you will accept, what you won't tolerate, how far you're willing to go, you begin to stand in your power. It doesn't make you cruel. It doesn't make you cold. It simply means you've stopped confusing being nice with being endlessly available. So many people believe that setting boundaries means pushing others away. But in reality, boundaries are what allow you to be close to people without losing yourself. They create space for healthy relationships. They prevent misuse of your energy. They protect your time and your peace. And when people know where you stand, they can meet you there honestly. No games, no manipulation, just clarity. Without boundaries, your kindness becomes a resource for others to exploit. You'll find yourself being used, not always maliciously, but certainly carelessly. People will begin to expect your yes. They'll assume your time is theirs to take. They'll get comfortable with the version of you that always makes room for them, even when it leaves you feeling depleted. And when you finally push back, they'll say you've changed. But really, you've just stopped giving what you never should have given in the first place. Boundaries are not walls. They're not cold, harsh barriers that shut the world out. They are doors with locks. You decide who comes in, how far they go, and how long they stay. And if someone doesn't respect your boundaries, that's not a sign to loosen them. It's a sign that person was never truly honoring you in the first place. The strongest people are not the ones who say yes to everyone. They are the ones who can say no clearly, confidently, without guilt. They don't need to be loud. They don't need to justify every decision. Their power lies in self-respect, and that self-respect creates the foundation for how others treat them. You teach people how to treat you by what you allow, what you reinforce, and what you walk away from. Kindness, at its core, is about care, but that care must include yourself. If you extend compassion to others, but exclude yourself from that equation, you're not being kind, you're being conditional. Real kindness is inclusive. It starts within, radiates outward, and never asks you to betray your truth. You can be kind and still say, that doesn't work for me. You can be kind and still say, I'm not available. You can be kind and still walk away from people who drain you. You can be kind and still demand respect. In fact, your kindness becomes more powerful when it's rooted in self-respect, because then it's not about approval, it's not about being liked, it's not about keeping the peace at all costs. It's about showing up authentically, giving generously, and knowing when to step back. Don't let the world confuse your kindness for permission. You're not here to be agreeable, you're here to be true. Kindness is not weakness, it's a choice, and when paired with boundaries, it becomes one of the greatest expressions of strength. Always being agreeable might seem like a harmless, even admirable trait. You smile, you nod, you go along with what others want. You avoid conflict, you smooth things over, you try to keep everyone happy. But underneath that surface of pleasant cooperation lies a dangerous truth. When you are constantly agreeable, you become easy to manipulate. You turn into someone who is not respected, but used, not heard, but managed, and the worst part, it often happens so subtly that you don't even realize it until it's too late. Manipulators don't usually come in with loud, obvious threats. Most of them are subtle. They test boundaries. They observe how much you'll tolerate. They notice if you always say yes, even when it inconveniences you. They notice if you hesitate to speak up when something feels wrong. And once they realize you're someone who avoids confrontation, someone who wants to be liked more than you want to be respected, they know exactly how to get what they want. When you're overly agreeable, you give off a signal, I can be bent. And there are people, consciously or not, who are drawn to that. They may not set out to manipulate you, but once they see that you're more invested in approval than authenticity, it becomes very easy for them to nudge, push, and eventually control you. Your opinions get dismissed, your time gets consumed, your needs get ignored, and all the while, you convince yourself you're just being nice. But niceness is not neutrality, it's often surrender. You surrender your voice, your values, and your power in exchange for temporary peace, and that peace is not real. It's the calm before a storm of resentment, anxiety, and self-doubt, because deep down, you know something isn't right. You know you're being taken advantage of, but your need to be liked keeps silencing that inner alarm. You might find yourself in conversations where you're constantly agreeing with things you don't believe in, just to avoid tension. You might end up doing favors you never had time for, just because saying no felt too uncomfortable. You might tolerate toxic behavior because calling it out would make things awkward. But this pattern doesn't just affect your mood, it reshapes your entire life. You begin to lose confidence in your own judgment. You second guess your decisions. You feel powerless in your own relationships. And the manipulators around you, they flourish in that silence. They benefit from your discomfort. The more agreeable you become, the more you teach people that you are someone who can be negotiated with emotionally, someone who will likely bend if pushed just a little. And eventually, people stop asking what you want. They assume you'll just go along. Your silence becomes compliance. Your compliance becomes a habit. And that habit becomes your identity. But here's the truth. People who respect you will not leave when you start saying no. People who truly care for you do not need you to agree with them all the time. In fact, they'll trust you more when they know you're honest. Manipulators may walk away when you stop being easily influenced. Let them, because their presence was never about connection, it was about control. You must understand that integrity and authenticity are not always comfortable, but they are necessary. Being truthful, even when it's difficult, creates boundaries that protect your energy. It makes it clear that you cannot be manipulated, guilt, tripped, or emotionally blackmailed, and that clarity repels the people who thrive in emotional chaos. To reclaim your power, you must break the habit of constant agreeability. Let go of the belief that your value comes from being liked. It doesn't. Your value comes from being honest, from being whole, from being grounded in your own truth. Speak when you need to speak. Disagree when you must. Say no without explanation. Walk away when something doesn't feel right. The people who matter will stay. The ones who leave were never there for the real you anyway. Being agreeable might keep you out of conflict, but it also keeps you out of alignment. And no amount of approval is worth losing your sense of self. Stand firm in who you are. Let your yes mean yes, and your no mean no. Because the only way to stop being manipulated is to stop being manageable. Being nice sounds harmless. It sounds like a virtue. We grow up hearing that nice people are good people, that if we just treat everyone kindly, speak softly, avoid confrontation, and say yes often enough, the world will reward us. And so we try to fit into that mold. We become agreeable, easygoing, cooperative. We play the role we think others want us to play, but over time, something starts to feel off. We feel stuck, overlooked, underestimated. We feel like no matter how nice we aren't progressing, not in our careers, not in our relationships, not in our personal lives, and we wonder why. Here's the answer that most people don't want to admit. Being nice, when it means constantly avoiding discomfort, can actually block your growth. Growth requires truth. It requires discomfort. It demands that you speak up, take risks, challenge old beliefs, and sometimes upset people. Growth asks you to set boundaries, say no, stand firm, and make decisions that serve your higher self, not just your need to be liked. But if you're stuck in the habit of always being nice, you won't do those things. You'll hesitate, you'll stay silent, you'll choose comfort over courage, and that's where your development stalls. When you're too focused on being liked, you don't challenge the people around you. You let toxic behavior slide. You allow people to interrupt you, ignore you, walk over you just to keep the peace. But what you're really keeping is your own stagnation, because personal growth isn't found in being passive. It's found in those moments where you make a bold move, even if it's unpopular. Think about it. How can you develop confidence if you're always shrinking to fit someone else's expectations? How can you build resilience if you avoid every situation that might create tension? How can you become a leader if you're constantly deferring to others, afraid to assert yourself? The truth is, the path to becoming the person you're meant to be is paved with moments of discomfort, saying no when people expect a yes, speaking your mind when silence would be easier, walking away from situations where your energy is being drained. These are not easy things to do, but they're necessary, and niceness in the form of people pleasing keeps you from doing them. What's worse is that niceness becomes a disguise. You wear it like armor, hoping it will protect you from judgment, rejection, or conflict. But in reality, it just hides your potential. It keeps you stuck in a version of yourself that is safe, inoffensive, and, ultimately, small. And as long as you stay small, your life will remain small too. You'll find yourself in roles you've outgrown, relationships that no longer serve you, environments that drain you, and you'll stay in them because you don't want to seem rude, ungrateful, or difficult. But all the while, your inner voice will be telling you, this isn't who I am. This isn't what I want. And ignoring that voice, suppressing that truth, is the greatest obstacle to your growth. Being nice doesn't challenge the system. It doesn't disrupt patterns. It doesn't create change. It just maintains the status quo. And if the status quo is keeping you stuck, then being nice is not harmless, it's holding you back. You don't grow by being agreeable. You grow by being authentic, by being brave enough to have hard conversations, by standing in your truth, even if your voice shakes, by choosing honesty over harmony, because that's where transformation happens. That's where you start stepping into the life that's truly meant for you. So if you've been stuck, if you've been playing small, if you've been watching life pass you by while trying to keep everyone else comfortable, ask yourself this: is your niceness helping you become who you want to be? Or is it just keeping you where you've always been? The world doesn't need more nice people who hide themselves. It needs real people who are willing to grow, speak, and lead. Being kind is beautiful. But if your version of kind requires you to betray your own growth, then it's time to redefine what kindness really means. Don't let your desire to be liked become the reason you never become your full self. Growth begins where niceness ends and truth begins. One of the hardest lessons to learn in life is this: not everyone deserves your energy. It sounds harsh at first. It might even feel selfish, especially if you've been conditioned to always be available, always be helpful, always be the one who shows up. But the truth is, your energy, your time, your focus, your emotional availability is limited. It's not infinite. And if you continue giving it freely to everyone, especially to those who don't value or reciprocate it, you will eventually find yourself empty. The idea that everyone deserves your time and kindness simply because they exist is a myth. It's a mindset rooted in fear of rejection, fear of judgment, fear of being seen as rude or arrogant. But that fear leads to exhaustion. It leads to you bending over backwards for people who wouldn't even take a step for you. You become the person who's always there for others, yet constantly feels drained and unsupported. You become the emotional crutch, the problem solver, the peacekeeper, and deep down, it wears you down. The hard reality is that some people only come to take. They take your attention, your kindness, your willingness to listen, but they don't give back. They don't show up when you need them. They don't respect your boundaries. They only call when they want something. And if you've trained yourself to always say yes, always be available, they will keep coming, not because they respect you, but because they know you won't say no. Your energy is sacred. It shapes your thoughts, your emotions, your ability to create, connect, and grow. And just like you wouldn't hand your wallet to anyone who asked for it, you shouldn't hand your energy over to just anyone either. It must be protected. It must be earned. Not through manipulation, not through guilt, but through mutual respect and real connection. There are people who will misunderstand this boundary. They'll call you selfish, cold, or arrogant. But understand this: the people who benefit from your lack of boundaries will always resist your growth. They liked you better when you were drained, because you gave more. But that version of you was not sustainable. That version of you was constantly running on empty, and that version of you is not required to keep anyone in your life. When you realize not everyone deserves your energy, something powerful happens. You stop chasing people who don't care. You stop over-explaining your worth. You stop volunteering for every battle that was never yours to fight. You begin choosing peace over chaos, clarity over confusion, and purpose over popularity. You recognize that your energy is a currency, and where you spend it determines the quality of your life. Some people will only value you when they need something. Some will flatter you when it's convenient and disappear the moment you ask for something in return. Others will push your boundaries to see how much they can get away with. And the longer you allow it, the more you teach them that your energy comes with no cost. But it does. Every drained conversation, every forced interaction, every time you show up when you're already exhausted, it costs you something. Sometimes it costs your peace. Sometimes it costs your sleep. Sometimes it costs your sense of self. And what do you gain in return? Often very little. This is not about being cold or closing yourself off from others. This is about discernment. It's about choosing to invest in people who uplift you, who reciprocate, who add to your life rather than deplete it. It's about saying no without guilt. It's about recognizing that just because someone asks for your attention doesn't mean they're entitled to it. The more you value your energy, the more you attract people who value it too. The more you protect your time, the more you make space for the things and people that truly matter. And the more you stand in your worth, the less tolerance you'll have for relationships that leave you drained and empty. Not everyone deserves access to you. Not everyone earns your presence. And when you finally stop giving it away so freely, you'll discover just how powerful and peaceful your life can become. There is a deep human desire to belong. From a young age, we learn to seek approval from parents, teachers, friends, colleagues. We shape our behavior to fit in, to avoid conflict, to be liked. And somewhere along the way, without realizing it, we begin to trade authenticity for acceptance. We start showing the world a version of ourselves that we think they'll approve of, instead of who we truly are. We soften our opinions, we hide our struggles, we suppress our uniqueness, and we call it being nice. But the cost of constant acceptance is often your authenticity. And authenticity is not something you can afford to lose. You cannot fully express who you are if you are constantly checking the temperature of the room, trying to adjust yourself to make everyone else comfortable. You cannot live with purpose if your every move is filtered through the question, will they still like me if I say this? Living for approval is like living in a cage where the bars are invisible. You look free, but you're not. You are trapped by the need to be accepted, and in that trap, your real voice grows quiet. When your identity is built on being liked, you start to fear rejection more than you value truth. You hesitate to speak up when something bothers you. You avoid decisions that might make others uncomfortable, even if they're right for you. You say yes when you mean no. You smile when you're tired. You agree when you disagree. And all the while, a quiet tension builds inside the tension of not being yourself. People can sense when you're not being real. There's a difference between a person who is genuinely kind and a person who is performing kindness. One has presence, the other has a mask. And while the world might applaud your agreeableness on the surface, beneath that applause is often indifference. Because people don't deeply connect with who you pretend to be, they connect with who you are. Trying to be accepted by everyone leads to a fragmented life. You become one version of yourself in one group, another version in a different group. You adapt so much that you eventually lose sight of your original self. Your truth gets buried under layers of social approval, and that loss becomes painful because authenticity is tied directly to your inner peace. When you stop being real, you stop feeling whole. Authenticity means standing in your truth, even if it's uncomfortable. It means being willing to be misunderstood. It means saying things that might not land well with everyone, but that feel honest and right to you. It means showing up without apology, even when your presence disrupts the pattern of those who expect you to conform. It means choosing depth over popularity, connection over attention. There's a dangerous illusion in trying to be accepted. The more you chase it, the more it escapes you. Because the moment people sense that you're performing, that your words are rehearsed and your emotions filtered, the trust begins to break. The relationships that matter, the ones rooted in honesty and mutual respect, are not built on how well you please others. They are built on how well you remain yourself, even when it's hard. The truth is, not everyone will accept you. Not everyone will like your honesty. Not everyone will be comfortable with your boundaries, your intensity, your passion, your silence. But that's okay. You're not here to be palatable to everyone. You're here to live in alignment with your values, your purpose, your truth. The people who truly see you, who resonate with your authenticity, will stay. And those who prefer the version of you that keeps them comfortable may fall away. Let them. Their acceptance was never about you anyway. It was about their expectations. And living for other people's expectations is the surest way to betray your own life. You can't be fully alive if you're constantly filtering your words, your choices, and your energy just to fit in. True freedom begins when you stop trying to be accepted by everyone and start being deeply true to yourself. You're not here to live a life of quiet resentment. You're not here to nod and smile your way through life. You are here to stand, to speak, to be unapologetically, radically you. So stop being nice to everyone. Start being true to yourself, because once you stop trying to please everyone, you'll finally attract the ones who love you for who you truly are.